Niall Dickson, Chief Executive of the NHS Confederation. Thank you very much for coming along to talk to us about this as well. Same question that I began with Jonathan Ashworth with his interview. Do you think that there does have to be a trade-off as things stand in the NHS?
Yes, you can't expect the NHS to do everything, and the fact is that it is experiencing restricted funding, enormous pressures and hugely rising demand, and that cocktail of factors means that, of course, you then have to look at if you want to do some things, then there are other things you may not be able to do. So I think it was inevitable that the government, or the NHS England rather, would look at some of the targets. I sincerely hope we're not going back to a period 17 or so years ago when people waited 18 months rather than the 18-week target at the moment. But some movement on that, hopefully a small movement, I think is probably inevitable, or some other performance target.
Well, we should remind our viewers that that target, that 18-week target, isn't being abandoned, but people are being warned it could slip. And the sort of announcements that on investment that Simon Stevens was talking about this morning, he talked about some cancer services, about investment in mental health services for children and young people. Would he be able to announce those if he wasn't also saying that these targets might slip?
Well, it's a complex set of balances that you have to strike, but you're right, you can't start asking a service that is already very stretched to start doing new things, and even meeting the new cancer targets, as it were, will be a stretch for the system. So I think it's perfectly reasonable for NHS England to identify areas where it thinks there are priorities. It's also fair enough to say there are inefficiencies in the system that need to be tackled, and certainly our members would absolutely recognise that.
But even if every inefficiency in the system was tackled, clearly that's not going to be enough to make up the shortfall. Just remind our viewers, what is the amount of money that you think the NHS realistically needs to try to get everything to the level that people like Simon Stevens, that every NHS worker, would like?
Well, we certainly think that there is a shortfall in the amount of money, and Simon Stevens alluded to this, that the government itself was promising. The amount of money that's going into the service this year is a smaller proportion than it was last year, and it'll be even smaller in 18-19. So we feel that it is likely that the pressures are going to increase. Our big priority, I have to say, was to put money into social care, and to be fair to the government, they did put £2 billion into social care announcement in the budget, but that still leaves a health and care system which we think overall is underfunded.
Is it fair to say that when Simon Stevens set out his 5-year plan 2.5 years ago, we're halfway in now, that the particular pressures on the NHS that he envisaged then, well, they've changed?
Yes, I think we've all underestimated just how much the accumulation of factors, mostly of elderly people who are living longer, but who have, as well as healthy life years, more unhealthy life years. And the system, as we have it at the moment, is not geared up to deal with that. And that's why NHS England are absolutely right to suggest that we need to have a much more joined-up system than we've had in the past.
OK, Niall Dickson, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts on that story today.